Gerber Daisies, this is part 4, and we're going to work on the background and just finishing up the touches of everything. I'm going to start by adding blue to the leaves of the Gerber Daisy. They were too yellow, too much yellow-green, so in order to change that, I just added blue as a wash over the top, which makes it green, makes it a little bit darker. I'm leaving some of those lighter areas so the yellow still comes through on the veins of the leaf, but it also just greens up the leaves a little bit. By keeping it light, I don't lose all the texture that I had created initially. I'm going to wet the background, completely wet it, and then I'm going to start putting in blue. So I'm working wet into wet. The background was wet first, and then I'm adding the blue of the sky for the sky color. I started with cyan, kind of a phthalo blue, and just washing that in with water so it doesn't get too dark. I'm going to put in the suggestion of a flower over here. We'll see what happens when it dries. It's wet into wet, so I'm not being real careful about how it's going to look because it's going to bleed. I'm being careful around the edges. I'll come back in with a brush to come right up to the edge before it dries. I'm going to add salt, and I'm going to work as I go, bringing in a little bit more detail to all these white spaces around the flower and the leaves. And I'll continue using salt and hopefully get it dark enough using a smaller brush, bringing in the color right to the edges of the flowers. Wet an area and then I salt it while I'm going so it doesn't dry too quickly and it will still work with the salt. Again, I'm creating another section. We'll have a section of leaves back here, so I made it more green, brought in some into the flower area. Filling in all the white spaces around the flower and the leaves. I do a section at a time and I make sure I salt it before moving to the next section. I'm bringing in some browns to give a sense of grounding to this flower as well. And it would fade into the distance, so I'm letting those colors kind of run together. It's kind of a purpley brownish color that I'm putting in. Felt this area needed a little more darkness, so I'm bringing in a little bit more. And while it's still wet, give it a little more salt. I'm going to start working on some of these other areas on the leaf while I'm waiting for the background to dry. Every place where a leaf tucks in behind another, I'm going to need to darken so that it tucks in behind. And I'll keep doing it until I'm satisfied. Defining some of my edges. So after the painting is dry, you can see how all the salt worked in the whole piece. And some of it gives suggestion of flowers in the background or texture in the ground. Here in this area here, I could add more flowers or have the suggestion of flowers. This pink kind of the Gerber Daisy kind of needs to be down here in the base where the ground is. So I'll do a wash of that color down there. I need to darken my Black-Eyed Susan vine petals, and then I'll probably do a wash in the sky because it's just a little bit too much salt up there. So I'll just give it a wash to subdue some of that salt texture. And now I'll start by mixing some colors for that ground after I scrape off all the salt. Here's my suggestions for maybe the ground color. And just kind of lay that in lightly so I don't lose the texture of the salt underneath. And bring it all the way up in here behind the flower. And you can see that that kind of brings the painting together a little bit more to have that color coming down and around, brings the circle around. I'm going to add a leaf here. It just seemed to need something else in this edge here to define a little bit more definition to the yellow flower. Again, scraping just like I did before. I'm going to start an edge to the flower. I'm going to start defining the edges of the stem. So if I put a dark line down and then I soften it with water to pull it into the distance, and that defines the edge, and I call that pushing and pulling because you're kind of pulling something towards you, pushing it back in the background, just defining edges. It's a technique I use often to finish a painting. And every one of these leaves needs to tuck in behind if it needs to tuck in, so I might add some blue, push it back behind the other. My wash of the sky, just coming in with a light blues. I don't want to completely lose all that texture in the sky, but I do want to lose some of it. And I just come down gently into the flower area. I like the idea of some movement in my sky, so I'm not doing it solid. I'm leaving some space for suggestion of depth and other things going on. A little more blue, needs to tuck back further. A little more darkness here, defining the edge of the foreground leaf. I think the background needs to be a little bit darker, so I'm just going to wash it through with a deep purpley black, brown, really dark blue. Watercolors can dry lighter, so coming in with something pretty dark still will lighten up a little bit. Underside of these leaves needs to have a nice shadow to help it be grounded. So I'm just going to lay that in and put in some more texture kind of lines for creating a sense of ground. And maybe shadows on the ground. Creating the suggestion of a flower here, I'm going to turn it so it's sort of on the side. Another suggestion of a leaf in the background. These will be leaves back here underneath the other flower. I'm going to blue out this edge over here of the flower to make it kind of disappear into the sky a little bit, bring the sky in, create the sense of maybe there's something more going on back there, but I don't need all the details. Bring in suggestion of pinks in here, just to also create the sense of something else is there, but undefined. So just continue the pushing and pulling until it's enough that it meets, that I feel comfortable with where it has gone. There's a part of that back end of the yellow flower that just kind of has an interesting shape to it. I want to make sure it looks like it's sticking out a little bit more from the rest of it. Here I'm creating more of a sense of leaves in the distance to go with the flower that's in the distance. But again, it's just a suggestion, not a lot of detail. The pushing and pulling really lets you see the vine. And there you have the Gerber Daisy and the black-eyed Susan vine.